The man in charge of distributing this corn was Charles E. Trevelyan, and he believed that the judgment of God sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. That calamity must not be too much mitigated. So he thought the Irish deserved it, and that the British should not help too much.
Hello folks, you are very welcome. If you're wondering why I'm speaking slightly quietly, it's because my baby son is sleeping here in the office, and this is the only hours of the day that I can get out here to work on these, and I have finally finished my most recent video now on the Irish potato famine. It is a very important part of Irish history. It has shaped and continues to shape Ireland today, and the echoes of that history are seen not just in Ireland but in other places across the world as we speak. So I thought, reflecting on my own history of famine, potato shortage, and the bureaucratic mess that led to 1 million people to die and 1 million people to leave the country. Just a heads up, this one is dark, it's apocalyptic, it is bleak, but it's also very interesting and might hopefully shed some more light that it wasn't just a potato famine, that everybody seemed to somehow not realise that they could eat other food other than potatoes. There's more to it than that, and you'll find out. If you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, all of that jazz. Like, share and subscribe. If you wish to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/John D Ruddy, or you can also go to memberships here, right here on YouTube. Your ongoing support is always hugely appreciated. The more support I get through the likes of Patreon, the more I can afford to spend more time on these projects. Specifically at the moment, I'm having to supplement it with other projects in order to make sure that I can pay the bills. However, I do love making these videos so much, and I do love being able to teach us all about history and to, in this case, share my own history, my own Irish history. Let me know in the comments as well if you want to see more Irish history specifically as well, because I would certainly like to share more. I just need to make sure that there's good demand for it out there. But anyway, folks, without further ado, here we have An Gort the Mór, the Great Hunger.
Manny Man does history. Ireland had long been at odds with their powerful neighbour England. Over the centuries, the English conquered and colonised Ireland in many ways. The 16th and 17th centuries saw a difference in religion between the groups, with the Gaelic Irish being mainly Catholic, those who came over from England were mainly Anglican, and those from Scotland were mainly Presbyterian. Around this time too, the wonder crop from the New World, the potato, was introduced to Ireland, possibly by Sir Walter Raleigh. It proved to be a brilliant source of food for the poor Irish, as it was cheap and easy to grow. The farmland of Irish Catholics had been confiscated by the English in the 1650s, and since then a Protestant minority owned and controlled the land. Irish peasants continued to work on the land, but only rented it from the landlord. Penal laws brought in to punish the Catholics dictated that any land that was still owned by a Catholic family had to be subdivided when the father of the house died, leading to the land being divided into tiny lots in only a few generations. Because the potato supplied such an effective food source for the poor Irish, it allowed them to grow and sell other grains like oat, wheat and barley in order to pay their rent. There had been famines in Ireland in the past. A particularly bad one in 1740 and 41 hit Ireland with failing crops due to exceptionally cold weather. This killed possibly up to 20% of Ireland's population. There was a lot of wealth in the Kingdom of Ireland during the 18th century, as the Parliament of Ireland in Dublin attracted those looking to be in and around all that political influence. The penal laws against Catholics did also clamp down on Presbyterian rights too. Throughout the 1700s, many Presbyterians had left Ireland and moved on to the American colonies, but those that remained found themselves having a common cause with Catholics against the British establishment. In 1798, the Society of the United Irishmen, of whom much of the leadership was Protestant, led a rebellion against British control, looking to become a republic. During this rebellion, they allied with revolutionary France, England's enemy at the time. This was a big no-no to the British, so they crushed the rebellion and shut down Ireland's Parliament and merged the kingdoms to become the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The Parliament was now in London, and so went many of the influential people looking to be close to power. Many of the landlords of the massive estates across Ireland left too, leaving their estates to be run by agents who would collect the rents. Ireland was being abandoned. There were indeed Irish politicians fighting the Irish cause in Westminster, such as Daniel O'Connell, the Liberator, who gained many rights for Catholics across the UK. In the 1830s, his attention went towards repealing the Acts of Union and establishing a parliament in Ireland once more. Many of his younger supporters thought O'Connell wasn't forward-thinking enough, and the group he called the Young Irelanders emerged with a vision for a pluralistic Ireland, including the Protestants dotted round their country, in their concept of an independent Ireland. While much of Great Britain was swelling with the Industrial Revolution, most of Ireland remained agricultural, acting as Britain's breadbasket. By the 1840s, many Irish people were already struggling to pay the rent as it was, many having to go and work in Scotland and England and send money back. But in 1845, tragedy struck. A fungus-like infection affecting the potato crop had been spreading across from North America, and in September it had reached potato crops in Ireland, and the spuds began rotting in the ground. The disease known as blight turned the potatoes into a smelly, gooey, snotty mush. You could smell it in the fields. People desperately tried to dig up and salvage what they could, but so many potatoes were lost across the country. There was still plenty of grain and livestock in the country, but they were too expensive for many of the poor. Any leftover crops had to be sold on to pay the rent to avoid eviction. Reports reached the British government about this developing situation, and the Prime Minister, Robert Peel, attempted to repeal the Corn Laws, a set of tariffs put in place to fix grain prices and protect profits. Loads of landlords and Tories were up in arms about how unfair it was that farmers wouldn't be able to profit from the sale of their grain. And during all this political turmoil and resignations, the English political conversation was focused on the Corn Laws, and not the starving people of Ireland who were heading into a long, cold winter. American abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who had been touring Ireland and Britain giving lectures, noticed already the depths of poverty amongst many of the Irish people. Early 1846 saw the first deaths from starvation in Ireland due to the potato blight. Prime Minister Peel had secretly ordered £100,000 worth of Indian corn from America to help relieve the starving Irish. He set up a programme of public works, having the Irish work for their food because, heaven forbid, they would just get it for free. Many of these initiatives resulted in the construction of so-called famine roads, seemingly pointless paths through the wilderness, giving the poor and starving something to do. Manual labour. The man in charge of distributing this corn was Charles E. Trevelyan, and he believed that the judgment of God sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. That calamity must not be too much mitigated. So he thought the Irish deserved it, and that the British should not help too much. Prime Minister Peel was forced to resign, and the new government believed that the free market would sort itself out and somehow provide for the starving Irish people. So they pulled back on the aid programs, leaving many to starve. Grain continued to be exported from Ireland, and more people were being evicted from their homes, unable to pay the landlords, many of whom weren't even in Ireland at the time. Some private groups like the Society of Friends and the Central Relief Committee tried to provide for the people, but the people were getting weaker. Some groups of Protestants used the opportunity to convert many Catholics by tempting them in with food. Conversely, some Catholic priests guilted the starving Catholics to not accept aid from Protestant charity, lest they burn in hell for all eternity. The government relief initiative eventually started up again, but all the paperwork and red tape slowed people actually getting food. As the harvest of 1846 came around, people hoped for a better crop of potatoes, but the blight returned, wiping out almost the entire crop, leaving an already weakened people facing a darker, colder winter. As the rest of the grain was being loaded onto ships to feed Great Britain, many Irish people in those ports rioted, the grain guarded by armed soldiers. Some organised groups of poor Catholics, such as the Ribbon Men, took justice into their own hands, going after landlords and those part of the system. 1847 had a better harvest, but because there had been fewer seed potatoes to grow new plants, there were fewer potatoes in general, and poverty, starvation and disease had only gotten worse. A Soup Kitchen Act was brought in to feed the people, but it was ended again after the summer. More and more people were trying to get into the local workhouses, which were set up for the poor to live in and work for their food. To pay for all this, the British brought in local rates so that local communities would pay for the local relief, which resulted in further impoverishing local communities, and thus more evictions. The Gregory Clause within the 1847 Poor Law Amendment Act actually demanded those seeking aid to actually have nothing, encouraging many Irish to forfeit any land rights to their landlord. Word spread across the world about the starving people of Ireland. In North America, the people of the Choctaw Nation, who had only just suffered along the American genocidal Trail of Tears in the 1830s, managed to raise $170 for Irish famine relief, a generous gift from a deeply wounded people. In today's money, it would be worth thousands of dollars. Alexander of Russia, Pope Pius IX, and US President James K. Polk all made private donations. The Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Abdul-Majid, wanted to send £10,000 to aid the Irish, but was asked to reduce it to £1,000 because the Queen of Britain, Victoria, had only donated £2,000. He sent the £1,000 to Ireland, along with several ships full of food, which landed in Drogheda. People from around the world would send money to help the Irish, but so much was swallowed up in bureaucracy, and the horror continued. This year became known as Black 47, as the worst year of the famine. As Irish people became more and more angered by the British regime, the British Parliament allowed the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland to organise police forces and limit gun ownership amongst the Irish people. As landlords and agents of the state were being murdered, it was enacted that local Irishmen had to help in finding whoever did it, lest they be imprisoned for the crime themselves. In 1848, the Young Irelanders unveiled their new flag in Waterford, which was to represent an Ireland of the future, with peace between its Catholics and Protestants. That July, they rose up in open rebellion against the British in South Tipperary, but were ultimately outnumbered and they fled. Each year the blight returned, the potatoes failed, and more people died. Cholera spread across the weakened population, as well as typhus, dysentery and scurvy. Mass graves grew alongside the workhouses and in graveyards. In March 1849, in County Mayo, hundreds of people arrived to Louisburg for an inspection to continue receiving outdoor relief. only to be told that the inspectors had moved on to a hunting lodge in the mountains, and that all those people were expected to present themselves at 7 a.m. the very next day, meaning they had to trudge up into the mountains through the valley of Dulach that night, only to be told the next morning that they were not eligible for outdoor aid. Amidst the horrendous weather, at least 7, possibly 20, probably more than that, died along the way. So many people left their homes, walked the roads, headed for the cities, headed for a port, anywhere to flee the horrors behind them. So many people left Ireland to England, Scotland, America, Canada, wherever they could escape this hell on earth. Some landlords actually paid their tenants boat fare to get them to leave. Conditions on the ships across the Atlantic were so cramped and unsanitary, many died along the way, giving them the nickname of coffin ships, with a 30% mortality rate. Just outside of Quebec City, Irish immigrants were held on Grosse Isle to quarantine, where over 3,000 people would die of typhus. Those who had been arrested in Ireland, many were sent off to the penal colonies in Australia, to the far side of the world, probably never to see Ireland again. Queen Victoria actually visited Ireland, to a lukewarm welcome to say the least. Skibbereen in County Cork would be one of the absolute worst spots of the famine, with so many people from West Cork heading towards the small town. By the early 1850s, the famine had fizzled out as the blight eased and the potatoes could grow again. But 1 million people had left Ireland and another 1 million people were dead. The population of Ireland in 1845 was about 8.5 million, and by 1851 it was just over 6 million. And Ireland was so badly damaged, economically and psychologically. The South and West had seen the worst of the losses, with some cities seeing increases in their populations as the poor flocked to the urban places. The effects of the famine would linger on in Ireland. The waves of emigration continued as living conditions were still terrible. The Irish diaspora were now spread across the world, with growing Irish communities now in Boston, New York, Chicago, Glasgow, Liverpool and London. As more Irish showed up to the United States in the 1860s, many ended up being signed up to fight in the American Civil War straight off the boat. Sadly, many Irish people in America would take out their class struggles and frustrations on more vulnerable groups, particularly African Americans, the rat race demanding us to step on each other's faces to climb out. The militant end of the Young Irelanders would evolve into the Irish Republican Brotherhood and the Fenian Brotherhood, twin organisations on either side of the Atlantic, working, training and fighting for an Irish Republic. Some of the more parliamentary-minded would go on to become the Irish Parliamentary Party, which would seek to demand home rule for Ireland. Many Irish people looked to the English government to blame for how bad the famine was allowed to be. It wasn't even a famine, it was a potato shortage. Prices were too high and a lot of the crops were shipped away to England. Some suggested that it suited many landlords better that there were fewer Irish people in Ireland, that the death and mass emigration was highly convenient, and by many it is seen as genocide by neglect. People continued to leave Ireland, and by the 1890s the population was around 4 million, half of what it was before the famine. And the population of the whole island has never actually gotten back to 8 million. It's around 7 million as of 2025, so in a way Ireland is still feeling the effects of An Gorta Mór, the Great Hunger. And Ireland is by no means full. Though the blight certainly affected Ireland the worst, across Europe food shortages were felt and inspired many working class revolutions in the late 1840s. The Irish National Land League in the 1870s and 80s would do a lot to gain land rights, ownership and fairer rents for the poor farmers of Ireland. The waves of immigration too led to huge losses in the Irish language, leading to the Gaelic revival in the 1880s and 90s to promote the Irish language and culture against insidious anglicisation and the Irish language literally being beaten out of children in the English-run schools in the second half of the 19th century. Claiming back our language has been an uphill battle, even post-Irish independence. My first language is English. An old proverb in the Irish language says, "Cheer gan changa, cheer gan anam." A country without a language is a country without a soul. The outrage from the famine would spur on a movement which would lead to the independence of 26 counties of Ireland in the 1920s. In 1997, 150 years after Black 47, British Prime Minister Tony Blair, while negotiating peace in Northern Ireland, admitted that the British government's failure resulted in such a deep, avoidable tragedy. Sadly, man-made famines would occur here and there throughout history. Joseph Stalin starved many across Ukraine and many steppe regions within the Soviet Union during the 1930s. Britain again, and the bureaucratic insanity of 1940s India led to the Bengal famine of 1943 during World War II. And indeed, in 2025, we saw Israeli forces and civilians blocking food from getting into the starving people of Gaza, as they already lay long under siege from Israeli forces. And once again, famine is used seemingly as an effective way to depopulate a region. Well, on top of incessant bombs and snipers. The ongoing civil war in Sudan has led to a massive man-made famine that continues to kill so many Sudanese people. Thankfully, An Gorta Mór is long enough in Ireland's past, but it is a part of our story, of our DNA, of the 80 million Irish diaspora across the world. But indeed, Ireland has long moved past the plague of landlords, gouging poor families, forcing people into homelessness, and turning the working class against each other with identity politics. Oh wait.
Thank you so much for watching, folks. I hope you, I wouldn't say I hope you enjoyed it, but I hope you learned a lot from it. As I said before, you can help support the creation of this educational content through patreon.com/John D Ruddy, or indeed through memberships here, or please get in touch if you want to send a one-off donation. That's also an option. But yeah, your ongoing support is hugely appreciated, because I love being able to create these for people to be able to use and to learn about history and to learn from history and to not make the same mistakes and the same ignorant moves as has happened in the past. So thank you so much for watching, folks, and feel free to share and let everybody know it wasn't just a fiddly potato famine. It was a lot more than that.